Hello, Stephen Kristof here, author of Feeling Normal Again, a post-pandemic guide to emotional health. And this is my second podcast on this book. And in today's podcast, I'm going to give you a deeper insight into what the book does and some of the specific things that it covers. I've received a lot of emails and messages lately, people asking, can you give me a better sense of the specific types of emotional challenges and physical challenges that this book can help to restore and strengthen and improve. And so I'm going to do just that. And I'm going to start here with one of the first challenges that I think is from my research, almost universal on a global level, and that is sleep disorders. So, sleep, as you know, is so important, but there's an awful lot of people. There are an awful lot of people who have not. This is hard to fathom, but who have not had a decent full night's sleep in 2 years, and it is because of the pandemic. If you see yourself in any of these, it's an indication that your sleep has been challenged. It may not be a full-blown sleep disorder, but certainly your sleep has been challenged, and there is a very strong reason that you need to get control of it and introduce, again, a more productive level of sleep, solid, sustained sleep. See if any of this it rings a bell. If it, check these off. And first one is waking up during the wee hours and finding it difficult to get back to sleep. Now, look, we all deal with that, okay? At any point in our life, even as children, there's something stressful, there's something, a question mark, something big in our lives. And, I don't need to name all the situations, could be anything. But we do this, and we wake up, and that's normal, okay? But if this has been a sustained thing, where you're night after night, month after month, whatever, waking up, and not being able to get back to sleep. And you can say that, prior to the pandemic, this wasn't an issue. I used to get good sleep. Then we know that this is something that has impacted you, and you can benefit certainly from the suggestions and recommendations in the toolboxes in this book. Playing games on your phone at 2, 3, and 4 in the morning. Yeah, really, really more common than you realize. Resigning to the idea that you won't sleep, so instead you make the most of your time, reach for some coffee and read or do work instead. That's not a bad idea, right? In general, because you're making the most of your time, you're being productive. But if this continues again on a sustained basis over and over and over again, you're not getting the sleep that you need. And unfortunately, if you don't get sleep, then it's going to affect your performance at work. It's going to impact your performance or your relationships within your home, your family life. It's going to, unfortunately, lack of sleep has a direct impact on your physical health and your mental health. Okay, they're all connected, and certainly the lack of sleep is something that can impact people to the degree where sustained sleeplessness, can introduce disease and many different types of illness into people's lives. So it is something that you need to get a hold of and turn around. A few other indicators here. Surfing the internet in the middle of the night looking for something that's reassuring. We haven't had a reassurance for 2 years. Everything in the media, has been this warnings and calamity. And even when things seem to be getting better, there's another wave that comes, another set of restrictions. It's not like we've been riding this roller coaster, and you get whiplash after a while, and we become very very sensitive to it. And so we're looking for something that's reassuring. Unfortunately, there's not a lot out there, and you're probably not going to find very much that's reassuring on the internet, whether you're surfing in the middle of the night when you should be sleeping or during the daytime. Awakening from exhausting dreams in which you're performing meaningless yet agonizingly repetitive tasks. Very good, very common, again, connected to COVID-19. Drinking increasing amounts of alcohol, relying on sleep aids, things that are unnatural in terms of, on a sustained basis getting a good sleep. It will have a negative, reverse effect. So it's not something that we want to rely on. And this last one, rolling out of bed in the morning, feeling fatigued and unmotivated, despite the fact that you hit the sack at a reasonable time. So many of the interviews that I've done with people and the further research that I did reveal that this is extremely common. So again, for each of these, there are check boxes to say whether this is something that is impacting me, and then there are, of course, the toolboxes that I have, the tools within the toolboxes that are easy to implement, and they don't take a great deal of effort. But they can make a very big difference. So that's just one example. Other things that I bring up in the book, malaise, and malaise is really a fancy word for feeling down and feeling like you're in a funk, basically in the dumps, and it's indicated by many different things that will show you that whether or not this is something that you're dealing with, and again, strategies to resolve. Worry and anxiety is another big one that is covered here because it seems to be connected to the pandemic for so many people. And the problem with the worry and anxiety, I mean, we all worry and we're all anxious from time to time. There's no question about that. But if it's a continued thing, if it's a chronic thing, obviously it can wreak even further havoc on our mental health and our physical health. I'm just going to give an example. So this is one of the strategies that I provide in my book of how to try to get control over your worry, your anxiety. And it's something that most people aren't aware of, but it happens with most people. And what it is basically is the idea that we set up subconscious connections, and we reinforce those connections so they become believable to us on a subconscious level. What am I talking about? Well, here's what it is. So let's say that there's something that you're worried about. Okay, a real reason. Something could have a negative consequence, and it could go either way. It could be a job interview. It could be a health report. Any plethora of things that it could be. But we're worried about it. So what happens is we worry, which seems like a natural response and emotion. But did you know that 90% of the time, and this is backed up by studies, 90% of the time, that negative consequence or outcome does not occur. It's only about 10% of the time that it actually does occur. And within those 10%, the 10 out of 100, it's only 1/3 of those that basically things work out like the worst scenario. So the other 2/3, 6.6 out of 100, things actually, they don't go your way, but they're not as bad as they could have been. So when you look at the odds, it means that there's an overwhelming likelihood that when you're worrying about something, the bad outcome won't happen. The good outcome will. 90% of the time, the good outcome will happen. Only 10% of the time, the bad outcome will happen. And when it does, it's not usually going to be as bad as you think. This is, again, something that we're not aware of. But what happens in terms of reinforcing a relationship, and this is where we're usually not aware of it, is that in our subconscious, we're convinced that the worrying that we did was somehow responsible for the good outcome. Listen, the good outcome would have happened 90% of the time anyway. But we're not aware of that. So when we're confronted with a situation that has a questionable outcome or a potentially negative outcome, what we do is, subconsciously, we don't choose to do this. It just happens. Our minds say, worry, 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 because if you don't worry, a bad thing's going to happen. How do I know this? Because most of the time, 90% of the time, when I worry, a good outcome happens. So that must be a cause and effect relationship. I worry, and it preserves a good outcome most of the time, almost always. We're not aware of this, but our subconscious continues to do this. So if we become aware of this, it's far easier to change on a conscious level our response to that situation and choose not to worry and have the assurance, the self-assurance that choosing not to worry will not make a bad thing happen. It'll just basically have us feel a lot better about what's probably going to happen anyway, which is the good outcome. Okay, so that's just one example. Many, many different strategies here and tools for many other different impacts of the pandemic. There's everything from having a fear of doing ordinary things that we used to do before the pandemic. So many people are dealing with that. Getting out, spending time with people. We've had 2 years, depending on your jurisdiction, of wearing masks and being taught that the virus is so contagious, and being fearful of other people and doing things where other people are involved. Losing our confidence about doing certain things that we used to do before with ease, and that gave us a great deal of happiness and satisfaction. So there are, again, all sorts of other things that the book focuses on, many different recommendations, strategies, tools that are easy to implement, that will make a difference in your life, that will help you to start feeling normal again and living life. And that's really what the book is all about. There are other specific situations, such as dealing with grief that occurred, losing a loved one during the pandemic, leaving a job earlier than one thought, retiring or resigning from a job because of the pandemic, and having to deal with really coming into a state of retirement at a time that it was not ideal, to say the least. Resilience, a lack of resilience, a lack of hope, lack of faith. These are all things that are covered in this book. So I hope that through today's podcast, I gave you a deeper understanding of what this book is about, and what it targets and how it can make a difference. I would encourage you to make the investment and read this. I know it will make a difference in your life now and into the future. And I thank you so much for your time. And until next time, take care.